Is it that bad if you and another artist have the same artist name? I'm just going to say it, yes. I got to be honest, I've done a bunch of videos about how to change your artist name on DistroKid, and there's a lot of technicalities that go into those videos, and I'm just going to oversimplify it. If you watch or skip through those videos, there's a lot you have to do to change your artist name. And my best advice to every artist out there is, if let's say you're getting ready to release your first single, you haven't released anything yet, whether it's on TuneCore, DistroKid, Ditto, CD Baby, all these different independent music distributors. Let's say you go to release your first single, you haven't done it yet, do some research. If somebody else has the same artist name, just trust me, change it. Or maybe do some variation. Like, let's say you're Joe Schmo, maybe instead of Joe Schmo, and there's probably a bunch of Joe Schmoes out there in terms of artists, maybe have the O be a 0 or something. I don't know. Basically variate it in some way, whether it's the spacing, the titling, maybe numbers involved, however you want to do it. Just do something, therefore your artist name is super unique. You're going to run into overall a tremendous amount of problems. So now going into the longer answer for this video, because I like to be very succinct in my short answer, now going into more of a story. For most of my dedicated subscribers, you will remember I used to release music under two different artists. Freccero, which is my main artist, and Style Free. I don't release music under Style Free anymore. Now all its releases go under Freccero. For me, it's just easier to release music under one artist, for me personally. And there's some differences for that. Probably a subject for a whole other video, if you should have one or two artist projects. But overall, I stopped releasing music under Style Free. And what was interesting, though, is when I released music under Style Free, I didn't really do some research. Turns out there are other Style Free artists out there. And at first, I didn't really think it was that much of a problem. I'm like, whatever, like, a lot of these Style Free people out there spell it Style Free. For me, I have Style/Free. So there's that distinction right there with the slash. I'm like, shouldn't be a big issue. But there were a bunch of things that randomly popped up that I did not expect. Now, first off, when I released music on DistroKid and I put it on Spotify, iTunes, Amazon, all these different platforms, all of them created a new artist on Spotify, a new artist on Amazon, etc., etc. They created new artist profiles just for me. And I was like, hey, no issue there, right? Not really. It really depends, though. For example, on Beatport, which is made for electronic musicians and DJs, turns out Beatport put everything under Style Free. So on my profile, I had other releases from other Style Free artists on my profile that weren't even me. They were just other people releasing as Style Free. And I was like, oh shoot, this is kind of weird that on some platforms, they create a new artist page just for me. But in other platforms, they don't. Another thing, if you think about it, is searchability. If, let's say, someone wants to search for Style Free, for example, I noticed other Style Frees would pop up on YouTube, on Spotify, on all these other platforms. I remember one time I was out in public, and someone says, oh, like, what kind of music do you make? I'm like, well, I have two different artists. Fraccero's like more like EDM and world music. Style Free is a blend of like hip-hop, down-tempo, funk, and jazz. And they're like, oh, okay, you know what? I'm not gonna lie, I'm not a fan of EDM. I think I'll like your Style Free music more. They searched Style Free on Spotify, and I remember like, it wasn't a ton, but I think it was like a good like 2 or 3 Style Frees popped up, and they're like, oh, so this one, right? I'm like, no, it's this one actually. And that's what made me realize, oh wow, even though I do have my own artist profile on Spotify and I can directly link to it and there's no complications from that regard, if I tell somebody I'm Style Free, they might click the wrong one, which they did actually. Luckily I was in public and I could tell them that. So, like I said, there's only like a couple different examples in terms of your music going on the wrong Style Free or on the wrong artist. Like say someone's searching for you and actually clicking the wrong artist. In addition, there's a lot of other things. In addition, copywriting and legal issues can become an issue. For example, let's say, just making this up, you want to release music under the name Skrillex. Well, if you think about it, if you keep releasing music under Skrillex, there is a possibility that the Skrillex and his legal team could say, hey, just letting you know, this is copyright infringement, that you're releasing music under Skrillex. there's only one Skrillex and this is kind of conflicting, etc., etc., that could be a legitimate possibility. So the big thing I suggest, and again, I could go into a lot of other kind of Murphy's Law territories of this could happen, that could happen, this could happen. Just trust me, make sure before you even release music that your artist name is as unique as possible. Now, let's say you're watching this video and you're like, shoot, I gotta be honest, Mark, I already released music, I've already released one album, and I realize that yes, there are other artists out there who have the same artist name as me. What should I do? Now, this does get kind of tricky, I'm going to be honest. My short answer, and again, this could be a whole other video in itself too, because things can get very technical, more technical than you can think. My short answer is, if you can, change it. If you've only released one album, all you really have to do is delete that album or that release. You do have to create new artwork, but really it's just more switching out the artist name for the new one, re-uploading it and everything. In my opinion, that's the best way to change your artist name, especially on DistroKid, is to delete all your prior releases. Of course, you have to change your artwork. That's one thing that a lot of people kind of forget sometimes. Change your artwork and then re-upload it. You don't even have to change your songs, of course. Just re-upload it under the new artist name. I would suggest to do that. Now, if let's say you're 50 releases in, you've released a bunch of albums and singles and EPs, things definitely get a lot more technical. Things get a lot more tricky because you're like, wow, that's going to be a lot of work. But overall, I just got to say, if you are in the position, you were like, shoot, I've already released music, and I do realize there are other artists out there with the same artist name, I got to say, I still think it's worth it to change it. It just makes things a lot easier, like I said, from any potential legal issues, from searchability. Let's say if you're Joe Schmo, and there's probably 20 or 30 other Joe Schmoes out there, who's the Joe Schmo you're trying to promote? In terms of your music going in the wrong places, it's very possible that not only other, like say, Joe Schmoes will get put on your profile, but your music might go on other Joe Schmoes profiles. Or let's say if someone searches a song, and let's say you make a song called, I don't know, Bob Smith by Joe Schmo, and let's say someone goes to listen to that song, they're like, oh, this is a good song, let me listen to your other songs, and they're like, oh, well, this song's a jazz song, I know you also make heavy metal, and you're like, whoa, what do you mean heavy metal? But turns out your song, for whatever reason, got put on the Joe Schmo artist profile that's actually the heavy metal band Joe Schmo, which actually be a funny name for a heavy metal band, and got put on the heavy metal band Joe Schmo's profile, but yours is the only one on there. And again, you can see there's a lot of complications, and there's even more instances, like I said, more Murphy's Laws I can go into in terms of instances where just really having the same artist name as another person, it's just not worth it 100%. And going back to the basics, like I said in the beginning of this video, one, if you've not released music yet and you're watching this video, you are in the prime position where, let's say if someone does have the same artist name, wait, don't release it yet, maybe go back to the drawing board. You may have to spend some time, right? I mean, I remember hearing this from, I can't remember what podcaster it was, but someone who said that your artist name is both the most important thing and the least most important thing when it comes to you as an artist. Because on one end, it's super important because that's what people call you. But on the other end, does it have to be this insane name? Not really. I mean, I might get some hate for this. Take the Beatles. Of course, I feel like you can make a good argument, the most famous artist of all time, right? The Beatles, right? You can make a decently legitimate argument for that. But if you think about it from like a big picture perspective, is the Beatles an actual good band name? I would say no. Like, the Beatles, not the catchiest name. However, it kind of goes back to that same point, like I said. So, thinking of a good artist name doesn't have to be this crazy, mind-blowing, creative journey where you have to create this amazing artist name that no one's ever heard of and everything. Doesn't have to really be that intense, but you just have to have something unique. I'm telling you, this is super imperative. So like I said, one, if you've not released anything yet, just trust me, create a unique artist name that no one else has. And two, if let's say you've already released music, let's say you're already, in a sense, in there deep, we've already released music, people know you as this artist name, etc., etc., I would still say it does depend upon your like level of success, so to speak. Like if you're already touring and everything, yeah, it does get a bit complicated where you're like, okay, well, I'm already kind of known for that. But if you're not at that level yet where people are expecting you because of, let's say, a tour flyer or a festival flyer with your name on it, whatever, if you are at the point where you haven't had enough success yet directly tied to that name, I suggest delete your releases, change your artist name to something unique, and then re-release all your releases.